Well, there you go. We'll just come see us play the solo. But yeah, that's non-negotiable. But it's trickier with some of the other ones. You know what's hard? And you brought up Starlight. Hey, what's happening? This is Myles Kennedy of Alter Bridge. And you're on air with Ruben Jay.
Well, it is time. I'm Ruben Jay, and you are listening or watching, depending on what medium this is on, the new and improved Ruben Jay Show. I'm excited to be rebranding this podcast that I've been doing for quite some time now as the Ruben Jay Show. You're still on air with Ruben Jay. You're still doing great things with me, and you're still along with me on a journey for great conversations and great entertainment. So just because the podcast is called something different now doesn't mean that the show is any more different than what it was before. Actually, I will address this briefly because this week's guest is just it's a phenomenal person, a phenomenal discussion, and it's a short podcast. But I'm excited because the person, let's talk about the rebrand briefly, because the rebrand is hopefully going to be something that encompasses everything that I want to do. And over the next couple of months, you might find me being a little bit more open and discussing more of like some of the stuff that's going on in my personal life. And On Air with Ruben Jay as a show title just didn't have the same cachet as the Ruben Jay Show, and allow me to have that versatility and the ability to be able to pivot on a dime and talk to some people who I wanted to talk to, and people who I have talked to and I have spoken to, but in a more honest and stripped down version. So as you tune into the Ruben Jay Show and you see the new logo, once I get it uploaded here, and you're able to see some of the stuff that I've done over the last couple of weeks while we've been on a quiet hiatus, and just a lot. It's been an interesting journey, and I would like to be able to say that part of this journey is to be able to bring better conversations to the forefront. So as the Ruben Jay Show becomes more of a brand and more of the opportunity to have great conversations with people, because that I think is ultimately the goal of this show, is to have great conversations with people of all walks of life, people who maybe are doing something that I don't know anything about. So welcome to the Ruben Jay Show. So like I mentioned earlier, you are watching the Ruben Jay Show. I'm excited to bring this podcast to you directly via Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all those, any podcast platform that you happen to like. If I'm not on your favorite podcast platform, please let me know. If you paid attention to stuff that's already aired on this particular episode, you will know that this week's guest is a very big get for me. And I've spoken with this guest before, and I've actually aired previous interviews that I've done with him from the archives, which I'll be doing more of. I'll be doing more archival stuff just to kind of lighten the workload. And I this guest is it's Myles Kennedy of Alter Bridge, and if you're watching the video version of this, you actually see a signed version, a signed album cover for his last album, The Ides of March. It came out last year, ironically in May, and I've spoken to him about the meaning of his music to me personally, some of the stuff that I've gone through over the years that, quite frankly, I'm not sure if I would have been able to completely survive without having Alter Bridge in my life. I lost a brother at the age of 13 in 2006, and actually, in about 14 days will be, I think, the 16th year that we lost him. And so it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny that the very first time I spoke with Myles was actually around, I believe, the 10-year mark of losing my brother, and then I spoke with him again shortly after my mother passed away. So these interviews tend to happen around significant dates, and it's just great to be able to connect with an artist who just means the world to me personally. And so this conversation obviously is to talk about his band's upcoming record. It's out this Friday, called Pawns and Kings, and I'm really excited to bring to you this conversation. So please check it out, listen to this conversation, and if you want more conversations similar to this, share this with a friend. I genuinely want you to take a few minutes and just forward this link to a friend, or a clip from the interviews, because this is really, honest to God, an incredible incredible podcast. For me, it's a personal project, to be able to connect with somebody whose music has been with me in the lowest of moments in my life and the triumphs of life. And I look forward to whatever comes next with this band and with my podcast. So all that to say, again, share this with a friend, with a family member, somebody who you think might enjoy this conversation. But just as importantly, make sure to head over to multimediamouth.com/Amazon and do your Amazon shopping. Click the banner. We get a percentage of that. And if you'd like to get this interview ad-free, head over to dollarinthejar.com and you'll get the complete ad-free version of this show. And with that, I present to you some commercials and then Myles Kennedy. Oh man, Myles Kennedy is joining me right now on air with Ruben Jay. He is here to talk about his new record, Pawns and Kings, with Alter Bridge, out this upcoming Friday when this gets released. Myles, thank you so much. I'm going to start out with a hard one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
A very hard question, and that is, what is Pawns and Kings to you? Because it seems like there's a lot of people out there taking the title of the album and that song and dissecting it to mean 50 different things.
Yeah.
I would love to get a quick synopsis from you of what you think Pawns and Kings are.
For me, it's pretty simple. It's an anthem for the underdog. You know, it's a song of empowerment. It's been very interesting for us to hear people's kind of what they're extracting from the meaning and how they're able to utilize it in their own lives. And so, you know, years ago, if you would have asked me this question, I'd give you a detailed, theory on what the lyric meant and what I was thinking when I wrote the lyric. But what I've learned is when you do that, then you don't do service to the song, because then people who might have thought it means one thing and they're able to use it in their life will then be like, well, wait, it didn't mean that, so now it doesn't have that profound effect anymore. So, but the broad stroke is, yeah, it's the anthem for the underdog.
I love that. And you know, one of the things that I love about the Alter Bridge fandom, which I happen to be a part of, is they're so passionate about the band. And with Walk the Sky, there was a little bit of for the first time, in my opinion, there was a little bit of people thinking, oh, this and that, it was too overproduced, underproduced. There's some real criticism towards the album. So I have a two-part question. The first part of that is, did you guys hear that criticism from the audience, and how'd you deal with it? And second of all, with that response to Walk the Sky, this record, Pawns and Kings, seems to be going back to what the first the first 5 albums kind of sounded like. Was that a response to any of that criticism from the fans?
Well, I can just speak for myself on that. I never stick my head into that arena. I don't read reviews. I'm pretty much off of social media at this point. I don't, for me, what I find is if you start doing that, then you're no longer staying present as an artist, and it's like you have an army of A&R people on your shoulders telling you the kind of record you should make. And so I think that it's just for the process, to me, stays pure and more authentic if I don't listen to any of that, and I just stay in the confines of my own head and in the band as well, and we just it's us against the world.
And I love that mentality, because it really feels like to me that Alter Bridge has always been, I mean, the story of you guys buying out your record deals in the past and moving on from big labels, like you guys were part of Universal for a while, doing some independent stuff. It really tells me that this project is a power to you guys as artists versus trying to appease A&R people or labels or radio play. Do you guys, now that you guys have been a part of Napalm Records for a while, do you feel that there's any pressure from Napalm to release radio friendly singles, or are you guys still kind of approaching it as you would when you guys were quasi independent prior to Napalm?
No pressure at all. They never. In fact, we don't really have like your typical A&R guy or girl. So we're left to our own devices, which is great. I think we've just been doing it for so long that we understand what we want. We also understand what our base wants. And so it's really just a matter of kind of having all of the boxes checked. But I say that with, at least for me, making sure that ultimately you're making yourself happy. And, I think that having those epic songs on there has become such a hallmark of what we do. But you also have to have that song that you can, that helps spread the word, that closer to 4 minutes in nature versus 8 minutes plus. You have to be cognizant of that sort of thing as well. But it's a balancing act in terms of making sure that you're not selling yourself short.
Now that you guys are back to touring, the last Alter Bridge tour unfortunately got cut short because of COVID, and you guys now have 7 records worth of songs to play. How much of a balancing act is it for you guys to pick a set list that will stay true to the staple songs that we all have come to love as part of the Alter Bridge set, plus playing some of the newer stuff? Plus, there's some songs that we've never heard live on an Alter Bridge show. How are you going to balance that going into the Pawns and Kings tour?
That's going to be very challenging, especially considering, when we first started nearly 20 years ago, we were having to put covers in the set just to make sure that we could cover, the 90 minutes to 2 hours that we needed to play. So it's a great problem to have, but yeah, you always run the risk of, that person that pays to see the show and they're like, oh, I wanted to hear, insert whatever song, and then they don't play it, or we don't play it. So that's certainly becoming more of a challenge. And, it's a real delicate dance.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this, I went to go see you and Slash in Vegas, and everyone was like, oh, I can't wait for them to play Starlight. And then Starlight never came, and we're just like, dang it. But, right. But, like at the same time, it's like, okay, you guys have 4 records out, plus Slash has an incredible array of a library to play from as well. So it's like, I was kind of telling people, I'm like, listen, I won't be surprised if they don't play Starlight just because they have so much going on. But, it's one of those things where that's a staple, and that's kind of what started the group. How do you, like, realistically speaking, do you guys sit there and say, okay, we have to play Blackbird, we have to play Watch Over You, like these are the two non-negotiables, everything else we can kind of filter in and out, or do you guys just say, let's just see how we feel on the tour?
I think Blackbird's a non-negotiable, you know. That's one. I don't think you'll ever go to an Alter Bridge show unless we have like a 4.5 minute show where we just can't fit the song in. Yeah,
that's, you can put the solo in.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just come see us play the solo. But yeah, that's non-negotiable. But it's trickier with some of the other ones. You know what's hard, and you brought up Starlight. What's hard for a rock band is, especially after X amount of records, you've got X amount of ballads or slower songs, right? And if and ballads can be important parts of your legacy, but if you have a few that people want to hear and you put all of them in the set, then you've got less of a rock show, more of a, it's nighty night time.
Well, but it's I think that, again, it comes down to a balancing act. But I think, like, if you're talking like, Watch Over You and Blackbird versus maybe like Shed My Skin from the first record, I think people who like Shed My Skin will still pick Watch Over You, if they had to choose one. So I don't think it's going to become that big of a deal when it comes to that particular song. Now, the other thing that I find very interesting of the evolution of Alter Bridge is how much more Mark is taking vocals on each record. It always seems to be at least one song where he's doing vocals. You have Words Darker Than Their Wings, where he takes part of the song. At some point, are you guys going to become like a two-man fronted group and go back and forth more often? Or is this just kind of like, again, depends on the song? How's that working for you guys?
I think a lot of it is dictated by the song and the kind of songs that are brought in. For me, like on the new record, Stay was just an obvious Mark song. It initially was presented that I was going to sing it, and I was the guy that I remember talking with Elvis, and I'm like, this is a Mark song. Mark should sing this. It's great in his range. It's right in his range. He's got a great timbre. Why not utilize that? And so I think that it's just become such a hallmark. I guess we started doing this on Fortress, if I remember correctly, where we start integrating the two singer approach. And how will that play out on future records? I guess remains to be seen or heard, no pun intended. But I love it because for me, I get to step back and just play guitar. And during the set, it's great because it's a rest that I need, especially as, we're an interesting band because we're not like, we're getting to the point where we've been doing this long enough. We're getting to a certain age. And as a singer, especially a singer that sings higher and whatnot, a lot of guys by this point start doing, a show and then 2 days off, show, 2 days off, and it lets things kind of bounce back. We're not one of those bands. We aren't in that position. We have multiple shows in a row. And so I'm always having to think about, how do you pace that? How do you pace the set so that you can still do the important songs in the catalog? And so for me, it's great having another singer where I can kind of let that happen. Let those 3.5 to 4 minutes of rejuvenation from my vocal cords, and then we can continue the set.
With this upcoming tour, I'm personally going to at least 2 shows just because I want to try to see as much diversity in the sets as possible. For you as a performer, I know what songs I'm looking forward to hearing, from the discography. What song off of Pawns and Kings are you most excited to play live in front of these massive crowds that especially in Europe, that you're gonna be playing in front of, stadiums and arenas? What song are you looking forward to playing the most?
That's a tough one. I'm curious how if Fable of the Silent Sun will be interesting. Because it just seems like it would be a real challenge. How we'll recreate some of that live. So that part excites me. But also, I'm hoping we're going to play Stay so that I can take a break and Mark can sing.
I feel like we're going to get like a Mark block.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, it's interesting, because again, like I said, this is your 7th record. You mentioned that you guys have been around now for, I think, going on 18 years now.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Yeah.
Almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like the rendition that we're on, where it's, we have an Alter Bridge record, an Alter Bridge tour, and then we have a Tremonti and a Kennedy record, or a Tremonti and a Slash record, and then those bands go on tour, and then Alter Bridge comes back. Realistically speaking, you've worked your ass off for the last 12 years straight. It seemed like with COVID kind of being in between. How much longer do you really see you being able to manage 3 projects full time, touring, and doing all of that without there ever coming a point where you're just like, I'm tired?
That's a great question. And, to be totally honest with you, I think that the last 12 years were so, especially the 10 years leading up to when everything shut down, 2019 had gotten to the point where I was gone 300 days out of the year, and it was just getting, and I was burning out. There's no question about it. I was getting a little frayed. So I think moving forward, I just want to make sure that I do a better job balancing things. And what I've discovered about myself during the last 2 years was how much I love being home, and the little rituals that I love, look, it's like I get up and I do what I do throughout the day. I have my routines, but then little things like we eat dinner, and then my wife and I and our dog Mozart, we watch TV. And it's just a little thing, like Mozart wants to get up on the couch and sit next to me. It's the thing Shih Tzus are very regimented dogs, and they have patterns they follow. So it's just I did this little dog looks at me, is like, I want you to lift me up and set me to your left side, because this is what we do. And one would think, like, it's a big deal. It's a dog, but it's like, it's that ritual, and it's that thing that just makes I feel needed. The same way, like when we're performing the songs, you feel like you've got a purpose. So, it's balancing those different dynamics and being more of a well-rounded human. I think that's really important for me at this stage in life, not just to be all this guy, but also a little bit more of the guy who hangs out with Mozart.
A little less Myles Kennedy rock star and a little bit more Myles Kennedy, dog dad.
Dog dad.
That could be a t-shirt.
Dog dad.
That somehow.
I like it.
I've been following you guys now since day one. I fell in love with you guys as a fan during the WWE used your song for a pay-per-view, and then Edge has used your song for since it came out, and I've been able to see this progression from what a lot of people called, wannabe Creed style, album 1 to the Blackbird days to today. Looking back in the last 18 years, is there just a moment where you look back and just said, man, I'm so glad that we continue to stick through this, even with all of the label problems, and there was a while between album 1 and Blackbird where I thought you guys weren't a band anymore because we just hadn't heard from you guys in such a long time.
Right.
Is there a moment where you look back and you just say, man, I'm so glad that we powered through, and here's where we're at, and this is what we're doing, and we're able to release now album number 7, which I think is one of the best pieces of work you guys have put out as a band so far?
Thank you very much. It's a hard question. I mean, I don't know if I sing a single moment. I think that playing the Royal Albert Hall was certainly a very important moment for the band, and that was definitely something that I think all 4 of us feel pretty strongly about. Was that was a kind of you feel like you've arrived after a long time, and it's interesting too, even just doing the press for this record, so you're talking to a guy who doesn't read press, and I don't know what goes on in social media and whatnot, but talking with folks like yourself and continuing to hear now about like the legacy and realizing, wow, I mean, I didn't really realize that till this point, just as far as what that means, and that, wow, somehow you managed to come out of the genesis of the band, which was, there were a lot of comparisons, and I think a lot of people kind of wrote the band off initially. And so we had a lot to prove. And I think that in a lot of ways was important as far as the development of the band and how hard we worked. We really, our work ethic was at such a point, at such a level, just because we felt we were the underdogs. and we had to just, keep pressing forward as passionately as we could.
So what you're saying is you guys were pawns.
Now
you guys are kings.
Well, I don't know if we'll ever feel like we're kings. I like it though. Good stuff.
Yeah, I will say this. I have written articles about how Ides of March should have won a Grammy.
Oh, thank you.
There are plenty of songs on your guys' discography that I thought should have gotten awards, and you guys should be recognized as a much bigger and better band than what you guys get here in the States. The Europeans know how to treat you guys. The Europeans, they treat you guys like kings. Out here, I don't think the United States ever gave you guys the proper time of day, and so I will forever hold you guys in high esteem.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. But to be totally honest with you, if you were to add, let's say Mark and I, we kind of like the altitude we fly. I don't know if I'd ever want to be a quote unquote king, because then I feel like you're a moving target. I think if we fly at this interesting altitude where it's just right. We have people who are so supportive and allow us to do what we do, but yet we're not at this point where you're a target,
Yeah.
and I like that. I feel like we've carved out a nice little niche, and we built our fan base the hard way. We're not I don't think we have a lot of quote unquote radio hits and whatnot, so we didn't evolve that way. We evolved just through beating the pavement, and touring and making record after record after record, and here we are.
Yeah, you guys are above. You're at a good level. You're not the Nickelback, where people are just throwing shade your way just to throw shade. But I still think you guys deserve a lot more respect. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I do just want to encourage everyone to go out and buy the album. It comes out on October 14th. And if you're in Europe, they're touring starting in November. The United States, they're starting, I believe, in March or February, somewhere around there. All the details are at alterbridge.com. Myles Kennedy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Ruben, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And that was a conversation with somebody who I called a rock and roll legend in the making when I announced this podcast. And I think I misworded it. I think I miswrote, whatever the correct phraseology is there. I believe that Myles Kennedy is a rock star and a rock legend already. He just happens to be one of the few rock artists who wasn't given his proper place in the music world. And I think that the more music he releases, whether it's a solo project or with Slash or with Alter Bridge, or if he happens to get picked up by another project, I think that his importance to rock and roll, his importance to modern day music, whether it becomes a smash radio hit or not, is going to always be that of a legendary vocalist and songwriter. And ironically, one of the greatest guitar players of this generation. Like, people don't give him the flowers he deserves for any of those moments. In an interview that Slash had done to promote one of his records, I believe it might have been the World on Fire record, which is their second album as Slash and the Conspirators, Slash featuring Myles and the Conspirators. Slash actually mentioned that he was taking guitar lessons from Myles. So that tells you how good of a guitar player Myles is. So all that to say, thank you so much for tuning in to the rebranded episode of the Ruben Jay Show, the very first one. I plan to bring you many, many more with some breaks in between, some holiday stuff, and just, want to respect everybody's time, my time included. So again, share this with a friend, multimediamouth.com/Amazon, help the show out, and dollarinthejar.com. There's a free tier and a premium tier. Get these episodes ad-free. And with that, I'm out. Special thanks to Myles Kennedy for taking time out of his day to do this with me and for me, and making 2022 an incredible year so far. So looking forward to it, and I'll chat with you guys next week. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe on YouTube as well. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff here. Just FYI, I got some ideas. So subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. I'm out. It's Ruben Jay.